Good friggin' morning from New England, folks, and welcome back to episode 23 of the So New England podcast. I am your host, Ian Brownhill, joined by my co-host, as always, Robert Travisano. And all things life spent in New England on the production side of things, we have Vincent Guarneri. As always, guys, we have a very special guest for you today, and it's going to be the first time that we're leaning into more of an educational piece while also telling an awesome story of someone that's been special in my life. So without further ado, RJ, why don't you give us a great introduction?
Wee! Here we go.
Always with the wee.
It's my favorite. Episode 23, folks, and today's guest hails from our lovely hometown of Westerly, Rhode Island. Our guest joins us as a public relations supervisor from a wonderful group known as Duffy and Shanley, where she has worked over the past 12 years to help brand partners with bloggers, influencers, and even some celebrities. This group, going on 50 plus years of work, is responsible for influencer campaigns for brands looking to get more eyes out there in the consumer and retail space. Now, you may be asking, RJ, what in the bejesus does that mean? Well, let me just give you an example. You know how Ian dresses up in his Dunkin onesie and sees how many donuts he can eat? Yeah, our guest is very responsible for that, and that's who gave him the opportunity. She found him and promised free donuts for work, but I'm sure she will give us a way better, much more sophisticated answer. This Boston University graduate has quite the story of her travels for school and career, and I cannot wait for her to share her journey with us all. It is my pleasure to welcome from our beloved hometown of Westerly, Rhode Island, Miss Cait Arsenault Baker to the pod.
Nice.
You like that?
Am I considered a celebrity to you? That just made me think I wasn't. No. Okay.
No.
All right. Wasn't sure.
Not there yet.
I wasn't sure.
1.5 million is celebrity status.
Cait, thank
I've
you
seen you in the
so
jumpsuit.
much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. This is so fun. I love that it's all Westerly guys hanging out.
And that's what's so great. And that's what's like the perfect segue to why I started the podcast. This moment right here to me is like so New England, more specifically so Rhode Island, because we have a very funny history of how you and I ended up working together. Mm-hmm. Cait's mother was my school teacher, the only teacher that ever just let me have my ADHD rampage and actually passed me through a class, because she was like, he's actually quite intelligent if you just let him go mosey in the corner for 30 seconds and talk to himself. So, but it was actually just, crazy full circle moment how in this journey of trying to become an influencer and a content creator, dealing with the COVID pandemic, there was a lot of moving parts in my life. And at one point I was giving up and I was like, okay, it didn't work. That's fine. I can at least say that I tried. I got a part-time job working at a slots casino. And when people would ask like, wait, you don't work with Dunkin? I was like, I don't know. Like they're in my videos. I try, I tag them. And then my phone rang and it was you. And I was like, wait, is your mom Miss Arsenault? And you're like, yeah. I was like, are you from West? Like, yeah. I was like, I'm from West. And then it was like this crazy story about how it all kind of came to fruition.
Yeah.
So it's just really cool to me because I live for those aha moments in my life. So now that I can share that with people is really cool. But more importantly, now I can share you with the people.
Oh, that's very
nice. Why don't you give us your story in a nutshell about how you got to where you are with your career?
I think, this communications trajectory has kind of like always been the path for me. I mean, I was thinking about it. I have a 3-year-old and we ask her all the time what she wants to be. And she's like, when she grows up and she's like an astronaut or a wizard or a princess. And the truth of it is like, I don't remember wanting to do anything besides be a news anchor. Like I was so obsessed with the news always as a kid. I was like, I thought that the way that people told stories and digested stories was so fascinating. And obviously I didn't quite cognitively get like what my interest was then, but I was obsessed with watching like the Today Show. I'd rush home and watch Oprah. I was just so interested in the way that people told stories and how that impacted people and then how it motivated behavior. So I kind of always knew like I was never good at math. I was never good at science. I did the best I could, but I was like very strong in language and writing and reading. And I kind of knew that was my path. And I was pretty ambitious, first child, and I interned a lot of places and I was like really seeking out opportunities. And when, high school came, I was involved with the paper. I sought out like local opportunities. And then when it came to college, I was like, I want to go to a school that is going to give me an opportunity to be a broadcast journalist. I ended up going to Boston University, which changed my life in a lot of ways. And I went into the journalism school there, and I was so taken with it, and I loved the history of it, and I was so extremely interested in media. But, and this is kind of an interesting take in today's media landscape, I was a little bit stifled by feeling like journalism is so objective, and there's so much pressure to be objective and to tell a story that's not your story, and you can't input your story. It's the story. And I remember talking to a professor about it and being like, where does the creativity come in? Like, where can we problem solve? And he was like, I think you should look at the other side of this, which is PR. There's a lot of opportunity to do those things in that world. You can still write, you can still tell stories, you can still problem solve, but you have a little bit of a different side to it. And immediately I got an internship with a PR firm in Boston, and I was doing like grunt work, like working in a basement with like cobwebs and like, they gave me like little tiny things to work on, like, a tire shop, like how can you, make this tire seem cool, and just really started to enjoy it. And I found my niche, and then I kind of just leaned into it. I was really fortunate that BU had a lot of like really exciting opportunities of like being able to go abroad and do things. They had a program in New York that was really interesting, and they had a program in Los Angeles that was really appealing. And I ended up being a junior and going to LA. And I worked in LA at a PR firm out there that was a fashion public relations firm. And I'm dating myself, but it was called People's Revolution. And I go back to this experience all the time because it really was like one of those moments where it's like I was in the right place at the right time, and this kind of like shifted what I knew I wanted to do. At the time, People's Revolution was on an MTV reality show called The Hills. And I had like the real job of the girl on the show. She was supposed to be an intern at this PR house. And fun fact, I think I told you guys this, but Alex and Ani was a client of People's Revolution at the time. It was like their very first foray into this. It was like feather earrings before they came out with the bangles and all that stuff. So it was kind of fun because they were like, okay, Rhode Island girl, like you can work on this.
Yeah.
That was a connection I had with Nikki because she was working there at the time too.
Very cool.
But anyway, so the show would film there a couple days a week, and I would have to leave my desk and go sit in a closet while they filmed. But it was cool because I started to see like the bigger picture of like production and how like all of it worked and celebrity. And, I was kind of like absorbing it all, and I made a lot of connections, and I ended up going back to Boston, finishing my degree. And then my best friend from college and I both moved out to LA. And through those production connections, I got a job at an entertainment firm out there. And I spent a while working in entertainment PR out there, and had this really cool young life out there working in entertainment PR. And it was so cool and exciting. And it was probably, the very beginning of celebrities becoming ambassadors in a different way. Social media was emerging in like a very different way. I mean, I didn't have social media as a kid. I got social media. I got Facebook when I got a Boston University email. It was a totally different world. So you're only talking about a couple years of time before people were kind of leveraging social media in that way. So I felt really fortunate to kind of have like a front row seat to how that was like sort of all unfolding. And then, I did my time out there and I loved it, and it was a dream. But I'm a Rhode Island girl, and my family's really important to me, and it was far. And I felt like I was doing all these cool things, and I was meeting all these cool people, and I didn't really have the rest of my life. I had like that piece, and that was it. And I was like, okay, this is cool, but like, how can I do this and have the rest of my life like come together? And I ended up coming back east, and I got a job at Duffy, and it's been like a dream. I've been able to kind of combine all those skills and, grow to where I am now with a lot of that experience that was pretty unique to me. And here we are.
That's amazing.
That's so cool.
What an incredible story. And I mean, I know bits and parts of it, but there are some things I'm learning in there. And the first thing that you kind of touched upon that is something that's been relative to our storyline recently is that like time and place.
Yeah.
because I have often spoken about my success and just how time and place of where it was in linear years here and how it just kind of happened the way that it did. And it's similar in the sense that you were pursuing something, you were motivated by it, and then you had this really cool, which I also think is great, which is a good testament to your teacher, to kind of see where you were and be like, hey, this might be better for you, because sometimes people don't lend out that hand. They don't care enough to kind of do that. So I think it's really cool that your teacher did that.
Yeah.
And then it kind of landed you where you were, kind of like I pursued acting. I ended up making a career in content as of now. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. I just love the similarities there. And I think that it's really important that people kind of acknowledge that sometimes it is that luck. It is that situational,
totally.
Like this is what's going on and being prepared.
And I feel like, there's room for serendipity and hard work. And I think like both of it comes together.
Right.
And maybe that's karma. I don't know. But I also think like, I feel like, I worked really hard. I tried really hard. I put myself in situations to get me in better positions. But I also, like, I look back on my experience in LA, and I worked at a couple of places in LA, and I will say, one of the biggest things I learned is like, you don't have to be an asshole to be good at this.
Right.
Because I was surrounded by that. And I also think that there was just this, like, I was working for women who were really struggling to like be where they want to be and be supported the way that they should. And it wasn't necessarily that they were mean-spirited. It's just like they were being crushed in a lot of ways too. And I hope that now things have changed and are on the path to changing. But I remember thinking like, you can treat people well and bring people up with you and still go up. Like there's enough sunshine for everybody. And I've tried to like channel that because I've been given, I have incredible mentors. A woman from Westerly, Betty Jo Cugini, is like, I point to her all the time as like my mentor. She helps me to this day. She helped me when I was like a 16-year-old kid who wanted to be in the newsroom. She got me an internship at NBC when I wanted to try that out. Like, and I always think of her like she's been so successful and she's brought other people up with her. And I try to do that a lot in like my own work now too. And that's why it's like so fun when you can bring people along or recognize other talent and try to like get a team together of good people. You know, it works when you're surrounded by good people.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So I am curious, just because we are the So New England podcast, I would love to know, and I think that you also, I always try to find ways to utilize people's experiences to kind of touch upon this individual subject, and that is the difference between New England and other regions. Now, you're from Rhode Island.
Right.
I happen to think biasly that Rhode Island and Massachusetts are the biggest personalities of New England. Vermont's predictable. Maine, you don't really know. And New Hampshire, they're kind of, they are what they are. Love them, but But Rhode Island has a huge personality, Rhode Islanders specifically. And then Massachusetts,
You're
of
just
course.
You're going to skip right over Connecticut there? Throw them in there?
Connecticut doesn't really matter. And then, Boston obviously is the hub, but Massachusetts individuals as well, massholes as we like to call them. So I am curious to know, having been from Rhode Island, going to college at Boston University, and then working in LA, like there has to be a drastic difference in how people operate, how they are. So like, what has your experience been like with like the people, pros, cons? What did you like, not like?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I am a total Rhode Islander, like, and I'm not just a Rhode Islander, like I think there's like a Westerly Rhode Islander. Like,
100%.
I love, which some people,
South.
some people don't like it, but like, and I probably like, 18-year-old me wanted to get away because of this, but I love that like a day does not go by in town where I don't like run into an aunt or like see a friend or see somebody who asks how my parents are or see somebody who knows my daughter, whatever. I love that. LA is just different. Like it's just a different world. And I also think like, to me, it's like a lifetime ago because it was like a total different age in terms of, long pre-pandemic, but also like pre where we were at with social media. I mean, celebrity is like key there. Everybody works in the entertainment industry, like in whatever facet, whether you're like in tech or a celebrity yourself or in production or whatever, like the world is very different there. So I remember like working super early or super late at night, and people were like, there's traffic all the time because like nobody has a real job. So you're kind of like in the middle of the, you're driving in the middle of the day. Personality wise, like I always felt like people were very nice. I never had an issue with it. They just were very like to themselves. I don't know. I remember, and this is a true story, I went out on a date with this guy once, and he told me he was a writer, and I was like, okay. And
Sure.
he was a waiter, but we went on this date. We went to see a movie, and then he's like, "So I know you work like tangentially in the industry. Can I pass along a script?" I'm like, I'm making like no money as an assistant to an assistant. Like, I'm not going to help you out here.
Wow.
It's just like a different world, you know?
Wow.
You gotta
But yeah.
shoot your shot.
I guess so. Shoot or shoot, guy.
But
Hopefully they got that script.
yeah, I don't know. I have an affinity for Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I always found interesting, and you can attest to this because we both kind of did it. You more a little further, but a lot of people in our town, I feel like from 16 to like 19, are always like, I can't wait to get the F out of here, see the rest of the world, blah blah blah, and then you see them 20 years later, and they still haven't gone anywhere.
Yeah.
But you did.
Yeah,
So
and
you
I don't
can
think
actually say you went out and explored and got to see something different. So now that you come back, so that's really cool. Because I mean, I touched in Florida, not long enough to say I was there, but I've been there. Massachusetts, not that far, but for like school. He's been to Florida, so it's like that though. LA, I feel like that's a completely different beast, especially in the time frame you went.
Yeah, it was cool. I will say though, like I think I was really fortunate. I mean, my parents, like I think about being a parent now, and I'm like, my poor mom. I was like, I'm 20, I'm going to LA. Can you help me ship my car? She was like, I would die. What? These poor people. What did I do to them? Like we barely had phones. I mean, I had a cell phone, but you know, like it was a different time. And so I was so fortunate that I had people who were just like, okay, let's do it. Like if this is what you want to do, I'm going to support you. I don't think that if you never left Westerly, you're any less or anything like that. I think that there's plenty of people who I know who I'm just like in awe of that have created incredible career opportunities for themselves staying local and have turned it back and benefited the town and have raised wonderful families. So I think there's like any path that you take if you're, decent is a good one. It's just, I do feel lucky that I was afforded what I was. And it definitely has given me, I remember when I started working at Duffy and Shanley, like they've always, I love Duffy. It's like the best place to work. I feel so fortunate to work there. I truly work with my friends and they're so smart. And we've maintained like great client relationships for a very long time. And I think that's like very indicative of the people that work there. But I remember like coming in and being young and they were really at the forefront of like blogger partnerships and influencer relations before we even really knew what that was. And that was the skill set that I had kind of developed that was like, I've worked with celebrities, I know how this works a little bit, or I have a couple contacts, or, this is something that we did. Events I was like super familiar with. I mean, we did an event with like Prince William and Kate Middleton when I was out there. And
that's cool.
It was so cool. Again, like you think it's like, this is going to be the most amazing thing. And then you're home and you're like, everybody's sleeping that I know. So nobody cares. But, I mean, so, I feel like that experience that I was given has like helped me to build like a niche for us at Duffy that's been helpful too, like for client service purposes,
Well, you can really say too that you've seen almost all of how the growth of social media. Because I remember when you were trying to get your ADHD, ADD, what do you call it? One of those spurts out. So he was doing the videos and posting them on there. I don't know. I always forget what letters are. I'm sorry. But to put himself out there and like, you'd make a video or you'd make a post of like you making a peanut butter sandwich and you tag like G butter or something like that.
Oh,
like
my fitness influencing?
Oh yeah, that. Sorry. So like
fitness and ADHD influencing are two very different things.
Well, it was you trying to get yourself out there.
Yeah, I tried the fitness influencer thing in the like 2014, 15, 16 time frame.
My point is, excuse me, you've seen it from when like it was just a post of you like making something to now you can make an entire skit in like a reel essentially. Yeah. So like before videos in like the TikTok, and that's really cool. Can you like touch upon some of the big differences in what it like how it started and where it's become?
Yeah. I mean, just in the past decade, like I remember we started working with mom bloggers. And I mean, it was the social media aspect was really inconsequential for us. It was the blog. Like people were reading these blogs. So we would, handpick women or whoever, well, depending on whatever client it was, like who had these niches and these blog followings. And we would like work with them on, one-off capacities. And it was, the concept has never changed. The idea of this like third party credibility, that's what the key is. And it's never changed. It's just evolved enormously. And we use this stat a lot at Duffy, but a consumer is like 11 times more likely to digest a message if it's coming from another person instead of a brand.
100%.
So, what does that say, right? Like you can serve ads all day long, but it's not really being digested and it's not being consumed and it's not motivating behavior in the same way. There's a balance, and now there's a lot of rules in place about disclosing that you're compensated by a brand and consumers aren't stupid, but I think that there's more than ever an enormous need for like that third party partnership because it does anchor a brand in a very different way. I mean, we used to say that like the foundation of the PR house is media relations. And, I go back to like my love for media and news and understanding like, that's an important part of my job, like delivering a message to a reporter that's going to care about it and making sure that that message is crafted in a way that reflects my brand's, well-being or their message or whatever they're trying to get out there and making sure that's delivered appropriately. And the media is still extremely important. But there's also a piece of this house now that is that third party credibility. And it's just as important. I mean, I can't think of a brand that we have on our roster that is not extremely invested in influencer relations at this point.
That's awesome.
And in a world where, unfortunately, like budgets are being cut, like I think it's like 90% of marketing professionals are still allocating dollars or more dollars to influencer ambassadors. So the industry's strong and it's staying.
Well, the stats are there to back it up. So it's got to be.
But to your point, it's changing and it's not, and I think Ian, we can speak to this, like we change up our strategies all the time. Like you have to, you're constantly on the pulse of like, okay, video content's performing extremely well. Like we're going to funnel a lot more into that, or stories on Instagram are performing really well. Or we have, this obviously TikTok performs really well. It depends who you're trying to meet. Everybody wants Gen Z. Where are they? How are they shopping? What's motivating their behavior? What is the type of message that's digestible to them to motivate their behavior? It's a lot of work that goes into it.
Absolutely.
It's a science in a lot of ways too.
Yeah. Well, that was the part too, like when we kind of started all this that fascinated me the most, that I was super intrigued with, where I wanted to make sure that when it came to like the numbers crunching, like to look at what videos did, the markets they hit, things of that nature. So when an opportunity came to do that, I was like, I was all in. I was like, I made this big report and I was so proud of it. And it was so interesting. So that's really cool. I love that.
It's hard to gauge success in some ways too.
Yeah.
It is because it's, we look at like engagement rate as a metric.
Yes.
And there's so many, we've run the gamut with like types of content creation, right? So we work with ambassadors on a long-term partnership and they're kind of like the consistent tried and true. They're showing a consumer that there's like a real brand loyalty there. That definitely has major advantages. 100%.
Absolutely.
They trust you. It's trust. And I think in this world, like media has lost trust,
and
100%. And it's challenging. And I think that, when you can look to a friend, you take what they say a lot more personally.
Yeah.
And I think that, a good influencer has become that in a lot of ways. But there's also like programs that we've run for clients where it might be like a content burst. Like we have a ton of influencers posting about one product really quickly just to get the buzz out there, just to do a groundswell of noise and get like a big spike. Or we'll do one-offs. We have done celebrity stuff. Like it's a very different strategy. Does it work all the time? I don't know. Do you get the same engagement when you have a mega celebrity post one time about a product? No, but you get a lot of eyeballs,
Right.
you know, so we really have to like align the goals with the strategy, but there's a lot of ways to do it.
Absolutely. Well, it's cool because you mentioned like ads, for example, almost like they're not essentially, I mean, they are, and I don't mean this, I'm just using this terminology. They're not relevant as much as, you know, because I know for me, if I'm watching something that's not on Netflix, if I'm watching YouTube TV, like a football game, as soon as that game is not physically being played and it's commercial,
You're on your phone.
on my phone. So like if I'm buying something, I'm either watching him or looking at somebody that I follow all the time, or going through the FYP page or going through Reels, and it's like, you're right. So if I'm going to buy something, it's more likely to catch my eye through there from somebody that I like. So that's cool.
So I think the one thing I wanted to kind of dive into with you is kind of explaining not only what you do, but kind of giving us an in-depth, not necessarily experience, but education on the difference between public relations and PR work and the marketing industry, and what that looks like as a career. Like, what are the opportunities that are available to people? Where did you kind of find your seat at the table when it comes to what works best for you, what you enjoy doing? Just because I would also like this to be an educational piece for people that listen. And also, you know, part of my career was learning what marketing and PR relations really was, and how I can contribute my career into that, how they help me back, and how we work together, and why it's important. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of giving us a little bit of lowdown on what that looks like.
So, you know, I always try to say, like, when people are like, what is PR? And I'm like, well, it's a lot of different things, and it's evolving every day. And what I did a year ago or 3 years ago or 10 years ago is different than what I'm doing now. But, you know, we are storytellers. We take a brand and help them build their ethos and build what their public perception is going to be, what's important to them. And we help them craft messages to put that out where it needs to be so that consumers can receive it and their behavior can be motivated by it. And we do that in a lot of different ways. We do that through media relations. We do that through celebrity partnerships. We do that through events. We do that through digital marketing. We do that through, influencer ambassadorship. And, you know, it's an ever-changing world. But I think, like, the key is, you know, it's being smart, it's solving problems, it's identifying problems and anticipating problems before they happen. And it's helping position, like, our clients and our brands in the best light so that they can reach the audience that they want to reach. And, you know, we've come to a point where, like, you know, I mentioned before, like, Gen Z is like every retailer's target right now, you know. Because it's like, how do we reach this audience of people that are starting to make decisions about how they're going to consume product, purchase product? How are they doing it? It's a lot of analysis, you know, it's a lot of like, where are these people? Do they do what their parents did, or do they do their own thing? Are they purely shopping social media? Are they, you know, going back into brick and mortar for shopping and retail purposes? And it's like a lot of analysis about that and how to meet them where they are, and also how to expand consumer base, because everybody, you know, everybody's an option for a brand. It's just a matter of like identifying what's going to work and how that message is going to be digested. And for me, I have a psychology minor from BU. I was a communications major, but the psychology piece is always kind of interesting to me, because I am really interested in like how people consume information and how it does motivate them. And by no means am I a psychologist, but I often, you know, we often have to think about that. Like, how do we make this so that this resonates in the right way, the right audience?
Makes perfect sense.
That's a
great answer.
That's a great answer.
So then what would you say currently, I mean, I feel like you're kind of answering that, but what would you say currently is like the biggest obstacle and objective for how consumers are getting how they're being sold from companies? Because
so
you are the bridge for that. You guys are kind of filling the void where you're like, hey, this is what you guys should be doing because this is what Gen Z is doing. But Gen Z, we need you to do this for the consumer. Like, you are kind of the mitigator that is helping produce this product to get out to the public eye.
I think the challenge is just that it's so cluttered.
Right.
You know, I mean, we are being peppered by sales tactics everywhere we go. I mean, you know, even social media, like you're just peppered by brands all the time, you know? And I mean, I think that there's a lot of opportunity because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of profiles of people who can be your target, but it can be very inundating and very overwhelming. Yeah. So I think that's probably, you know, the challenge, but there's also just like a lot of interesting data, and we're like, at Duffy, I feel like we do a really good job of being like, okay, everybody in the room, like, let's think this through. Like, let's digest this. Let's look at the data. Let's look at like how people are shopping. You know, for instance, I find this so cool, but like legacy brands are like really hot again. You know, people who are in this Gen Z generation are finding like a lot of interest in like Levi's and these old brands that are like, they're not really, you know, there's something interesting to them about like this iconic like heritage brand. Like, okay, that's kind of cool. What does that say about them? Does it say that there's like a sense of nostalgia? Does it say that there's a sense of like what was once old again is new again? Like, what does that mean? It doesn't, you know, like it's just an example, but like there's a lot of stuff that we find that's kind of like, oh, okay, like if that's the thinking, what can we do here to like make this appealing? You know, it's a lot of, we're not just like throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. You know what I mean? We try to base it in something.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, just to kind of give insight to my perspective, because obviously I work with you guys, but I also work with a lot of other brands, which I'm fortunate to do. But each brand has a different strategic approach to how they want to do things. So, for example, our working relationship here with Dunkin kind of just trusts me. They understand that I'm going to do what I think is best for my audience and for my page. And my audience and my page has been integrated with Dunkin in a way that product placement is essentially all that is pretty much required for people to recognize that I am working with the brand. And from a statistical standpoint, when I turn on my acting and I turn on my production and I want to do these big things, I nail it. I knock it out of the park as far as being able to present to you guys. Look at the amount of work and effort I did. Thank you so much for trusting in me. But my audience is like, oh man, this is like a whole thing. Not interested.
Yeah.
I brain rot. 10 seconds, whatever. So it is very intriguing because then when I work with these other brands, for example, not going to name any names, I doubt they listen. The situation that I'm going through right now is that there's a brand that I said, please give me everything that you would like from me so that I know how to produce it. Please just be you. Okay, so I gave them everything that was me, just being me. They didn't like anything that I was doing. And then in turn, they give me back. And I'm like, okay, now you're just giving me an ad. I'm not an ad.
Right.
Because I'm not going to benefit. I'm not going to benefit from this partnership. You're not going to benefit. And it's just not going to. So there's like the trust aspect. Then there is the trying to utilize me as a tool. And then I look at these other brands, for example, and I think this is a good example. Dr. Squatch. Great brand that we've been, you know, using for quite some time with the soaps and body wash. They've worked with a lot of influencers in my circle. I've reached out multiple times and they're just not interested in working with me. And I'm hurt by that because I'm like, I don't get it. Like I do things in this world and in this realm. But now their huge approach and push lately was Sydney Sweeney. And I'm like, actually, this is genius because having a woman is going to get men to buy the product. The same way I have another girlfriend of mine who just did something for Manscaped. And in my mind, I'm like, she doesn't have a beard. Why would she use Manscaped? I'm like, well, all of her followers are men.
Women are the purchasers too.
Right.
You look at the data.
I'm like, so this is genius. So then like I'm like, okay, so now I'm thinking, all right, now I need to start finding ways to pivot what I'm doing content wise to try and attract brands because I'm able to offer versatility in my audience and so I'm just trying to give a little bit of insight in the fact that not only do marketers, marketing people and PR individuals have to constantly pivot, it's the same thing for influencers. Yeah. It's very rare. And Gen Z is probably the first example of people who literally can do nothing related to the product and it sells. Yeah. Like a Charli D'Amelio. Yeah. Like she'll dance and then she's like, by the way, get this eye cream. The eye cream sells out. And you're like, what happened? But it's like, you know, being a millennial is a very unique experience trying to do this as a full-time career.
It is crazy. Because like you made a good point that I didn't even think about when he was saying that. You were like, well, women buy it more. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think of that. That's genius.
Yeah. We work with a lot of retail clients. We have a lot of really wonderful brand partners and some really great data to point to. And I mean, I think, not to sound like that, but like women are the purchasers.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can target men, but at the end of the day, like the majority of purchases come from women. But to your point about trust, I can only speak to the brands that I'm working with for influencer partnerships, but I think, and I've always tried to advocate for this, like we're working with a third party because they're a third party. So as much of a hands-off approach as a brand can take with an influencer is what I like to see happen, because I just feel like that's the point. You are who you are. Your audience follows you because of who you are. They don't want to see you messaged by a brand to the point that it's not you anymore.
Exactly.
It's so clear to them that it's so paid and it's so sponsored. And I there's a fine line with that, and like, I think that there's a lot of value in maintaining that authenticity. And I give brands a lot of credit who are able to say, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of work that goes into partnering with influencers. They're very vetted. The audience structure is vetted, who they're reaching. I mean, we have, proprietary software that we look at to say, okay, this is who XYZ is talking to. This is their socioeconomic status. This is, how they purchase. This is other brands that they've engaged with. This is how they would be a good fit for this brand. So it's very curated how we do this. But I feel like once you get through all that vetting, then you can say, okay, you're a fit because of all of these reasons I just outlined. So you be you, and integrate this. And sure, we give guidelines. The brand has to be positioned positively. And, and we genuinely want you to like the brand. And, and I give you a lot of credit in particular, because I've come to you with stuff and you're like, I don't drink, I can't do this, or I don't really like this. So I think that's so cool, because you really don't just sell out at that point.
Right.
And I think that translates too.
You say how much? I'll do whatever you want. No,
no, but I think that translates. Yeah. And, and that's like a different, when we talk about like brand ambassadorship over a long period of time, that's extremely important. I'm not going to say it's not important, but if you're doing something where it's like a hot sale for Black Friday and a retailer wants just like a ton of influencers to post about it, it's not as critical that they have this like long-standing relationship with the brand, because it's something quick. It's just like a flash in the pan of like buzz, and that works in a lot of ways too. Or like an opening of something, like you want people locally at something, and it's in and out, and that's a different strategy. But talking about like how we've worked together, I think that's been really successful, and that's what we look to do, is to find people that have that authenticity, because that's the point.
Right. Having that long-standing relationship too is huge as a content creator, because when people see me out, and I reference this often, they point and say the Dunkin guy. And I'm like,
all the time.
So like for me, that's a huge thing, because I'm like, I mean, that means I've done a good enough job, not only representing the brand, but integrating my stuff in between, where they're not like, hey, it's a guy that gets paid by Dunkin. It's like, it's a Dunkin guy. It's like, and that's also probably makes it much easier, because I have a consumption problem of Dunkin. But, and to your point, when it comes to trying to be authentic, and this is also kind of advice to creators, is when you are trying to build your brand, authenticity will always show through. Yeah. And I think understanding your demographics and where you are in the age group, right? I'm a millennial. Most of my consumers are elder millennial and above.
Yeah.
So they're going to be able to see through my bullshit pretty quick. Right. Most of like the young Gen Z, they don't follow me, because, anytime I meet them out, it's, oh, my mom loves you. So that's also why when brands approach me, I'm like, I don't think I'm the guy for you, because you want me to reach Gen Z, and I'm not going to be able to do that, So I don't know. It just, the marketing world is very unique. And the main reason why I'm asking these in questions is because I had to learn all of this.
Yeah.
This was all, I was thrown into this boat in, a rocking ocean. And I was like, I don't know how to get control of this boat right now. So with your help and with other people's help, I've been able to do that. And I think a lot of people are seriously taking a content career, they're trying to pursue a content career seriously.
Yeah.
Like in their lives. And a lot of people are, young kids are doing the YouTube, they're doing TikTok, they're doing Instagram. Like even RJ here, this isn't what he wanted to do, but since we've started doing the podcast, I'm like, hey, you can do this. Like anyone can do it. Give it and he's been giving it a lot more effort, putting out videos, taking clips from this, and because it's opportunity for a lot of people to make a career or work with brands, and even if it's one or two, and it's just like a side gig, it's possible for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, the numbers are there. Brands are prioritizing it. You know, I mean, I think if it wasn't working, we would see that, and it's definitely working. So. Yeah.
Well, you see it more now because I feel like when you go on to any platform, the big two, TikTok and Instagram, especially when you're quote unquote doom scrolling as we like to call it, I feel like on TikTok, you're going to see someone, whether it's a paid sponsorship or they are promoting some ad, or on the other side, on Instagram, you're just going to see an ad that is essentially a reel that they made from their page.
Yeah.
And it's insane. It's almost like on Instagram, I think it's like every 3 or 4, maybe 5, and it's like, boom, ad. And TikTok the same way. So like you said, and you know, he says it all the time, there's money to be made. You just got to get out there. It's there.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So I think.
Don't ask my questions. Just kidding. I have one very specific question.
Okay.
But you can go ahead. Do your thing, hostess with the mostest.
Is it okay if I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good friggin' morning from New England, folks. This episode of the So New England podcast is brought to you by Iggy's RI.
Iggy's RI serves their award-winning clam cakes, chowder, doughboys, and more at 2 beautiful locations, one in Narragansett and one in Warwick, Rhode Island.
If you're visiting the Oakland Beach location, don't forget, Iggy's Boardwalk is a full-service restaurant. They also have Iggy's Creamery. But in case you missed a taste of home, don't forget, Iggy's RI ships worldwide on Gold Belly, right to your front door.
Iggy's also offers catering for your next event, as well as their very own food truck, bringing their Rhode Island tradition directly to you.
For more questions, visit iggysri.com. And remember, folks, it's always summer at Iggy's. So the one thing I really wanted to kind of put out there is there's a lot of small businesses here in Rhode Island. There's big business all over New England. In your professional opinion, should businesses be utilizing influencers, and what is a good marketing strategy in today's climate that is going to help these businesses grow? Because some people feel like they might be too late to the party, and I tell businesses all the time, it's never too late. Social media is not going anywhere. I know it's a huge powerhouse, but it's continuing to grow. Jump on the train now. Yeah. So what kind of advice would you give from a PR and marketing standpoint for these companies on working with influencers, strategies they could be, implementing and putting out there to help grow their business?
I think that, from a PR perspective, from our experience at Duffy and Shanley with our client list and just overall, there are no businesses and no brands that aren't, if they have the capacity to do so, working with ambassadors in some way. I think that, it's the proof is in the pudding. Obviously, media relations is important. Brand ethos is important. Who you are as a brand is important. But having that third-party credibility is just critical. I mean, social media is not going anywhere. It's growing and it's evolving and it's changing every minute. So by no means are you late to the party. And if there's a way to bring on a third party that can advocate for your brand in a way that is going to reach a consumer set that's important to you, and you can do it in a way that's authentic and that can give that consumer set a message that's digestible and can motivate their behavior, I mean, that's the point at this point. There's so much clutter. There's so much that we're being served all the time.
Right.
That's branded and that's so specific to, what they're trying to sell. And there's something really tried and true about having a friend tell you something and you feel like validated by that and you feel motivated by that. And I think that it's definitely a process. You can't just work with anybody. And there's a lot of different ways to do it, whether it be long-term ambassadorships, micro ambassadors, nano ambassadors, content bursts, whatever it might be. The concept is the same. You're having a third party tell a message that's going to resonate with their audience. That's a target demo for you. And it is important. And it's also intimidating. I mean, I know a lot of small businesses that are like, I don't have the budget to do that. And sometimes you don't need a budget. Sometimes you can work with, small influencers who are willing to do it for product or do it to help, themselves build their credibility a little bit.
Exactly.
There's a lot of ways to do this. There's a lot of conversations that can be had. I mean, back in the day, we used to trade product and that was it.
Yeah.
It wasn't a paid program.
Here's a box of stuff. Have fun.
Yeah. And
Make a video.
so there's certainly all different. I always say that to people who are like, well, I can't afford like what XYZ does and whatever. And it's like, well, you can do what works for you.
Right.
And it is important to carve out whatever dollars or whatever, you want to put towards that, because it's so critical today.
100%. And
that's awesome.
Something is always going to be better than nothing. So
Yeah.
even if you're not ready as a business or as a company to necessarily bring on influencers who can help your brand, start making videos, taking pictures, posting something on social media, because social media has become one of the most viable, critical sources for people when it comes to information of all facets of life.
Yeah.
Like if I'm going to go out and I want to go get a burger, I'm going to go and look for either influencers who are food bloggers or vloggers, or I'm going to go to Yelp. I'm going to go, and if there aren't pictures of the place, there aren't pictures of the food, there aren't credible reviews, like all of these things are pertinent to your success.
And that's mounting pressure for brands.
Exactly.
Businesses. But, I go back to the stat. It's like you as a consumer are 11 times more likely to digest information about a brand if it's not coming from a brand. So it's like, that says it all, right? That's the motivator. Right. How do you motivate behavior? How do you change consumer behavior? You got to do it through a friend, right?
Well, you're so right. And I think it's great. I mean, when he was in his fitness era, he would send me stuff all the time about, like, oh, this person or that person or this person. And that to me was huge, because it was like, out of all the people I know and out of all the people I respect, when it comes to some of the goals I'm trying to hit, he was the guy.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting it from.
So sorry. Was?
Yeah, you're not that guy anymore. I've learned enough from you.
You're not that guy,
branched
pal.
over on my own. But no, it's such a good point, because I think about those little scenarios where it's like, I've seen that person before, but I didn't follow him because it wasn't justified by my friend who also does that and can justify it. Yeah. So, but then you learn and figure stuff out on my own. But yeah, that's a big word.
All right, so you said you had a question for her. Why don't you go ahead and ask?
So this is going to be a little unprofessional, but like, I'm going to ask it anyway.
We can cut it if it's not good.
Yeah. So who in their right minds saw this man and
here
was
we
like,
go.
let's get him
Here
let's
we
get him
go.
a onesie. We're going to get him the shades, and now he's going to be the face of Dunkin'.
He's the Dunking.
Because, listen, we've gone to the beer fest. No, I'm not saying that right.
Brew at the Zoo.
Brew at the Zoo. Thanks, gents. For 3 years. And this man, and at the first year,
I was a judge this year. I was on the panel for the bands, Battle of the Bands.
The first year, I was astonished by how many people would do the. Is that him over there?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm looking for it at a certain point, like counting.
Yeah, give him a beer and he becomes like a PR nightmare. You would have like anxiety though. He's like, Ian's over here, come get him. You're like, no.
Don't you say that word. How dare you? And then the second year was kind of like, all right, this is normal. And then the third year it became, and like I still had fun with it because I love it. I think it's great. And if I can help fans, because I know him well enough to be like, he is a good guy. And I wouldn't want people.
Now he's smooth. Now he's brown nosing me.
It's because you always got to interrupt me. Can we mute him for once? No. But like now it's become, and again, I'm just a second party here. So like we'll go places and I'll see people do it and it doesn't even like get that same feel anymore. But I was just so curious, like why him? Why? Did you have to like the Dunkin onesie?
For you.
Like
we
who found him? We gotta talk to this person.
Well, it was during COVID, right? Isn't that when we started? Yeah. I think, at the time, brands, I mean, this was such an it's going to sound so lame, but it was like such an unprecedented time in every aspect.
Right.
And, I remember having a client that was launching this celebrity partnership line, and we had all of these plans, and it was going to launch like March of 2020. And talk about a shift. Like we were going to LA, we were doing a dinner at Chateau Marmont, we were going on the Ellen show. We had all these plans in place, and then it was like, right. And I remember me and my two colleagues sitting on one of their porches, like, X amount of feet apart, doing like a virtual press junket with a celebrity. We were like, how did we get here? Like every brand was just like, like, what do we do now? How do we stay afloat? And quickly we saw that, you know, people were on social media. That was the only thing that people could collectively do. And the strategies of a lot of brands shifted. I mean, for better or worse, social media kind of got us all through it in a lot of ways. And I remember like scrolling and being like, we want to present some options to Dunkin in particular of like local content creators that are a good fit here. And we can't do the in-store stuff that we were doing. And it was a hard time to be a restaurant. It was a hard time to be the consumer base that Dunkin is, you know, services a lot. And it's like, what can we present to them that would bring some joy and kind of cut through this a little bit? And Ian emerged. And I did know Ian like from Westerly and from connections and from all of that. And I was so excited to see, you know, what he was capable of. And
good friggin' morning from New England, folks.
And I'm just...
And hooked everybody.
Yeah. And I feel like it was a nice... yeah. I mean, there was a lot of brand authenticity in there already. You know, it was not a hard sell.
You could have just asked me. I would have told you.
But yeah, it was the start of a really wonderful partnership and friendship.
Well, thank you.
Amen to that.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Because I needed that just as much as he did. Because my addiction to Dunkin' runs through Ian. So,
Okay, so we are going to ask you some of our favorite wrap-up questions here. So, first and foremost, now that you have had experience traveling to the West Coast and other places, I'm sure you're pretty well traveled, right? I've been
a few places.
Been a few places.
Yeah.
So we have 6 beautiful states here in New England. 5.5. If you were to add another state to New England, what would it be? And this includes the weather, the people, the traffic, the foods, whatever it is, beaches or mountains and snow, whatever it is. Who are you bringing over? You bringing LA over to the East Coast?
I do love LA. Okay. I really do love LA. I was so fortunate, like when I moved back here, to spend a lot of time going back and forth. Like I was traveling a lot to LA for work. And so I kind of had like a little taste of it for years after leaving there. And I loved going. I didn't care about the flight. I love it. And obviously the weather's wonderful. I think the vibe is just, it's so different. It's just different. There's some energy about it that's really exciting to me. There's, I guess, like a little touch of nostalgia because it was like this very different sweet spot in my life.
Right.
I went back to LA a couple times, like with my husband, and it is funny to like merge those worlds because it was like I'm so much more of a full whole person now as an adult with like my family and this life, but there is a part of me that will always kind of love LA for that.
Yeah. Relatable.
Awesome.
I'm that way about Miami. I only lived there for 2 years, but it was like same thing.
The traffic really
is
sucks.
brutal.
Yeah. Like, I mean, oh my God.
You got to bring everything. So you're bringing over the traffic to deal with.
I know.
Wow. And imagine that LA, Rhode Island, and Boston traffic all on one friggin' road. It's a nightmare.
I know.
All right. So how about, do you want to ask it? You're giving me the eye. Go ahead. You can ask.
Ask it? Which one do you want me to ask?
Go ahead,
I'll ask
babes.
mine. So this is kind of an off question related to one of the questions, but when it comes to food, East Coast, West Coast.
Oh, yeah,
where's
good
your
question.
allegiance?
East Coast for sure.
Yeah.
And
LA doesn't got good food. No. What does LA got?
Yeah.
Their oceans don't really produce
feel like,
the kind of good fish we do.
That West Coast fit.
Yeah, I feel like East Coast. Like my mom's a fantastic cook. I grew up in an Italian family. We had a lot of that.
Perfect.
But
We'd love to come over for dinner. Thank you for the invitation.
I'll tell my mom. No, but she's a great cook. But I feel like Westerly's food scene is really amazing.
Underrated.
Yeah, very underrated.
And
I feel like
so
the
incredible.
places that have been there for many years, obviously there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And they just hit and they make you come back over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. They're down
Dockside B&B. That's my spot.
Smash.
Oh, good burger.
I love best burger in the state.
Yeah.
I've never had
Pizza
a better
place
burger
is
than
good. Love
Pizza place,
place.
best pizza.
Yeah. No, there's just good food. And I feel like I love that downtown Westerly proper now has become so vibrant again. It's like so exciting. I love being downtown.
It's nice to go back. Like when I go to see some family in Westerly, I try and find a way, because it's not like it's that off the beaten path, but to go through and see the nostalgic oldness of it that makes Westerly like lovable.
Yeah.
But then some of the new stuff that's like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, like Nana's is in town now. They're amazing. The cafe opened. It's next to the United. There's just Pooch's is really fun.
Yeah.
Really great people, like local people that like care about the community and help each other out. It's just like you feel good.
Love that.
And
We
the
were
food's
down at
good.
Grace Sale last week. That's what we did our most recent episode
so
on.
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Love
Yeah.
that.
Okay, final question.
Okay.
We need you to rank our 6 New England states in order. Top 1 down to number 6. What
Oh
are
my
your
God.
favorites?
Okay, let's see.
This gets posted every episode. No, I'm just kidding.
We know Rhode Island's number 1. That's
I
not even a
know.
question.
Rhode Island, Massachusetts.
Yeah, we went to
Love
BU, so that makes sense.
Boston. I've been to Vermont often. My husband's family is big fans of Vermont. And Vermont's really pretty. My dad's from Connecticut, so I have to say Connecticut.
Oof.
That's okay. We'll allow it.
Yeah.
Westerly's basically Connecticut, so I anticipated it being high up on your
Well,
list.
that's it. Like we're on the border,
Yes.
so
we are.
it's a little touch and go.
And the Westerly vibe is very much more Connecticut-y than it is Rhode Island-y, in
You
my
think?
opinion. Yeah.
Interesting.
Because I don't count Newport as Rhode Island.
No,
Newport and Watch Hill are their own worlds.
Yeah.
The affluent people that are like, oh, I go to Rhode Island, I go to Newport. I'm like, ooh, so you go to Newport. You don't come to Rhode Island. Okay. Rhode Island, in my opinion, is Warwick and Providence.
Oh, God.
Richmond, Wyoming.
What's that?
I don't know what you call
What are you
that.
saying?
I don't know what that is.
Trees.
That's like Maine. We have like
Yeah.
this little nook of Maine in in South County.
It's like Maine and
And then
Vermont.
like the northwest corner, like a little bit past like North Smithfield, when you get over to Chepachet and
Yeah.
Foster Gloucester, that's like kind of
Yeah.
that's like I don't know what that is,
Yeah.
but it's like to me, Rhode Island though is Cranston, Providence, Johnston, Warwick. That is like that's Rhode Island. Westerly is a bit
That's Rhode
Connecticut,
Island core.
and then Newport is like just
its own world.
Yeah.
forests.
Yeah. I can see that.
That's my opinion. You didn't ask for. So continue. Connecticut's number 4.
No, what did I say so far?
You said Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, Connecticut,
I'll go New Hampshire.
New Hampshire,
Yeah.
and then Maine number
And
6.
then Maine, I guess. I probably haven't spent as much time in Maine.
That's okay.
That's all right.
That's a very honorable reason
like
to
it
put
that
Maine
way.
6.
It's no, yeah.
That's totally fine.
It is funny though. I feel like I'm in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island like weekly, so it's like a rotating,
Yeah.
It's all right.
But Westerly, I mean, best part of Rhode Island,
Yeah.
don't you think?
Absolutely. 1,000%.
We will conclude it there on that hot take. Kate, thank you so much for spending time with us and helping our listeners here learn a little bit more about the PR and marketing agency. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being a part of my life.
Thank you.
This
Thank
has
you for
been
being his life part of it, part of that life.
But seriously, thank you very much.
Yeah.
If anyone ever want to get in contact with you for PR or marketing reasons or anything like that, could they?
Yeah, for sure.
Where can they find you?
Follow me on Instagram at Cait Arsenault Baker. Follow Duffy and Shanley at Duffy and Shanley on
Yes.
Instagram.
Wonderful
DM us
company.
on either of those. Thank you. Yeah.
Amazing people.
Yeah.
It's been such an honor to be able to work with you guys so far. So
Yeah, likewise. Thank you guys. This was so fun.
awesome.
So
All right,
fun.
ladies and gentlemen, that will conclude episode 23 of the So New England podcast. And remember, folks,
Life's better in New England.